I've had the iPhone 14 Pro Max for about a week now, and in this video I not only want to show you everything I have on it and how I have it set up for my daily use, but I also wanted to talk about two of my new favourite features that the 14 Pro brings to the table, so I think we should get straight into it. Okay, first things first, let's talk about this deep purple colorway, because when I first saw it announced and I saw all the videos and photos for it, I actually wasn't convinced and I thought it wasn't going to be a very nice color, but honestly in person this thing is absolutely gorgeous. They really got it right when they said deep purple, because it really is super dark, and in a lot of light it actually just looks kind of grey, but when the light does hit it right you get this wonderful deep purple hue which looks absolutely gorgeous. I really recommend seeing it in person if you can, because all of the photos and probably this video won't be doing it justice. So yeah, after my initial worries about it, I think Apple really nailed this colour. It's absolutely wonderful. Anyway, in terms of what's on the phone, let's start with the home and lock screens. And obviously with the iPhone 14 Pro series, you are getting the always on display, and I flip-flop on this. I didn't think it was amazing initially, and I still don't like how Apple just dimmed the screen rather than just show the clock. But if you choose a dark wallpaper for the front of it, it actually works quite nicely. This one is the dark mode wallpaper from our Luxe series, which I'll link below. And I find this really nice, and it kind of just makes that lock screen experience a bit better. I don't have any lock screen widgets. I'm not actually huge on widgets on iOS as a whole, so I just have the clock in the more serify font, which I really like, and the weather on top of that. When you open up the phone, you're greeted with all of my apps, and then the screen changes to the Aurora version of that wallpaper, which I think works really nicely. And this is my home screen, which is just full of the apps which I use mostly. Now, I'm not going to go through every single app, because I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with these, but the actual home screen layout is really simple. I have two main pages. The first page is this one full of apps, and if I swipe over, I've actually got another page which has got a few apps along the bottom and some folders, and I'm actually using widgets on this page. I don't use widgets on my main screen, but I do use them on the second screen, and I'm using an app called Clear Spaces to kind of get this effect so the wallpaper can go through, and it actually lets me spin things around which are on there. So for me, I've got my calendar and photos. I can spin those around and then they blend back into the background. Anyway, off onto the left of my main home screen, I've got some more widgets which are just battery, weather, fitness, and I've also got Spotify there, but honestly I very rarely go over to this page. I'm mainly stuck on these two. Explaining the apps on the home screen is a bit of a throwback for me, because this goes back to when I first owned an iPhone, and I used to put them all in rows of colour. So the top row was kind of the white ones, then the blue ones, and then the red ones, and then a bit whatever after that. So starting with the top row, we've got calendar, photos, camera, clock. I use the standard camera app. I've tried a few others on iPhone before, like the Moment one, but honestly I just come back to the camera one because really it is the best for just general snaps. I've got Mail, Twitter, App Store and OneDrive. I'm still weirdly stuck in the Microsoft ecosystem a little bit, so that's why I use OneDrive over Google Drive or something like that. The next row is kind of like my YouTube row and social. So YouTube Studio, which is where creators like me check a load of stats and all those sorts of things. Next to that I've got Instagram, which has turned into a bit of a big app for me now. I put a lot of thought into my Instagram, so if you're not following, go over there. It's @ByteReview. eBay for buying and selling things. Settings, Gmail is kind of what I use for all of my business email. Notion and To Do are two of my favorite productivity apps, which I explained in a recent video, so I'll pop that up here if you want to see it. And Lightroom is where I edit all of my photography. So I will do this on my iPad or my iPhone or sometimes on my Mac, but any photo I take, anything you see on my Twitter, anything you see on my Instagram, or even in these videos, is all edited within Lightroom, and I use my own preset pack for that. And I really love this app. I think the interface for Lightroom Mobile is absolutely fantastic, and it's one of the few apps which I think Adobe have got right on mobile. So yeah, use that. Messages I don't use very much at all, because we're here in the UK, which means we use WhatsApp for basically everything. And in this photo folder, I don't know why it's called photo, it's just my like leftover ones. It's kind of some other bits that I use. Imaging edges to get photos from my Sony camera to my phone. Ravis for my electronic slider, news, TikTok, obvious notes, Linktree. Linktree DoMarks is another new app which I've been getting into, which is like a bookmark manager I really like. And I've got the Joe Wicks Body Coach there, which I do every day too. Swiping over to the other page, these are just kind of like miscellaneous apps which I don't use that much, apart from Pinterest, which I do go into. The idea for the second page was for each app to have its own folder underneath it of similar things. So Monzo is a bank account for me, and then I've got money underneath that, Pinterest, and then kind of designy apps underneath that. Google Docs, and then all the Google apps under that, and then I've got WooCommerce, and I've just got a bunch of other apps kind of hanging around in there too. So that's how I have all of the apps and everything set up on my iPhone 14 Pro Max. As mentioned, I'm not huge into customization, and I really do like the simplicity of iOS, so even things like widgets and that don't really do it for me. So it's just a nice, simple, clean setup which lets me use my phone really quickly, and that's why it's like that. Before we talk about my favourite features of the new iPhone, I did want to thank the sponsor of this video, RHINOSHIELD. RHINOSHIELD is known for creating the most protective and custom phone cases out there, and today I wanted to show you their new array of iPhone 14 cases. Long-time viewers of the channel will know it takes a lot for me to enjoy a phone case, but since RHINOSHIELD started working with one of my favourite artists, Pyhem Studio, which I have plastered all over my house, it's been difficult to not get along with these. RHINOSHIELD has a huge range of cases for the iPhone 14, each offering various degrees of protection, but the ones I have here are the clean MagSafe versions and the solid suit. Both of these cases are perfect for keeping your phone protected from bumps, scrapes and drops, and the MagSafe compatible cases have twice the magnetic pull of Apple's official MagSafe accessories, making them one of the most powerful magnets on the market. RHINOSHIELD has literally thousands of designs to choose from too, along with cool collaborations, but if none of them are for you, and they might not be, then you can even upload your own designs to further customize your experience. RHINOSHIELD also make cases for older iPhones, AirPods and the Apple Watch too. So if you want to check these out, then be sure to use the link in the description below and to use my code BITE14 for 20% off in the first week of this video dropping and then 10% after that. And of course, a big thanks goes out to RHINOSHIELD for sponsoring this video. I did want to talk about two of the biggest changes to iPhone this time round as well, and which are my favourite features too, and that's the dynamic island and the camera. So let's start with the dynamic island. And it's an old cliche, but they say the best design fades into the background and you don't even notice it's there, you just use it without really realising. And honestly, this is how I feel about the dynamic island on the iPhone 14 Pro series. Like everyone else, when I first saw it, I was super impressed with how Apple have turned a hole punch for the camera into a software-based feature. It's a really smart solution to, let's face it, a pretty pragmatic issue. Some of the best uses for it are when setting a timer, navigating with maps, playing music, or knowing when my AirPods or something else is connected to the phone. Otherwise, unless I'm swiping an app up into it, which does look really cool, I generally don't notice it that much and use it just like a normal feature, which I guess is kind of a good thing. Apple has already got it working with loads of their apps, but it does feel like there's quite a lot left on the table here. In fact, I did see a tweet from one of the designers of the Dynamic Island from Apple saying they're just getting started with it and there's loads more to come, which is exciting. And I've also seen people have already started making mock-up animations of what it could do, so I don't think this feature has been completely fleshed out in its entirety yet. But if there is one thing you can count on, I bet you that this is going to be copied by so many other manufacturers out there. I think what's impressed me most though about the iPhone 14 Pro, and I would certainly say it's my favourite of all the new features, is the camera update. Apple advertised this as having a 65% bigger sensor than a 13 Pro Max, and it really shows. Photos from the new 48 megapixel camera are genuinely stunning, and colours, contrast, dynamic range, and thanks to that bigger sensor, you even get a really nice natural depth of field, which makes it feel like you're carrying around a small mirrorless camera, and it's so awesome. Most of the time these photos are being binned from 48 megapixels down to 12 megapixel shots, so they're easy for sharing, but you are still getting that nice added sharpness and detail. But if you opt for the Pro RAW setting, you get a full 48 megapixel DNG shot, which you can edit to a surprisingly high degree in apps like Lightroom. Some of these photos I was really happy with, and I was pleased to see how well they held up to heavy editing too. It is worth keeping in mind though that only the main wide sensor has gotten the big upgrade this time round, but the other sensors are still looking great too. And obviously video footage is exceptional here, and once again it kind of just extends Apple's lead with video even further than it was before. The main addition this year was the action mode, which stabilizes out footage really aggressively. It works well, but it crops in quite a huge amount and the quality is noticeably worse. You get a 2K output rather than 4K, and I have to admit, I actually just prefer the normal video out of the iPhone because that's stable enough, but I'm sure a lot of people will like it for more extreme sports where being stable is a lot more important. Okay, so that rounds up everything on my iPhone 14 Pro Max and all of my favourite new features on the device. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, pop a like on your way out, that would be massive. And also, if you picked up one of the new iPhones, then do let me know which one you got in the comments below. Always love to hear from you. And of course, I will see you all in the next one.